My paranormal experiences began in 2020 with a haunting that started in my home. Hello, everyone. It's Mary again. I'm on today to tell you about paranormal experiences that started in my home in 2020. The month was October 2020, and I had just recently purchased an object off of eBay. Now, this object is an everyday object you might find in your home, online, maybe in a hotel room. It is a sound device sold by a company, and all it does is it makes sound noises like rainfall, wind, water sounds, things like that to help you fall asleep. I purchased this item off of eBay because it was actually in the same area of the city that I was currently living in, and I still live there. In my mind, I assumed because it was so close, I would receive the object in a day or two, and therefore I would not have to wait too long for shipping. I was extremely excited for this object to be in my house. I had no inkling or thoughts or ideas of anything that might happen afterwards. The item arrived in a simple box with a shipping label, nothing special. It did not come with a charger, so it had to be battery operated. Obviously, that wasn't a problem as I had batteries in the house and could easily just turn it on to see if it worked. It did. Keep in mind that this object was kind of small, about the size of a book, and didn't weigh very much, about the weight of a book. So I took it upstairs and put it on my nightstand, and that's where it resided for a week or two until I decided to move it again and put it somewhere else in the house. At this point in time, I hadn't really started to see or notice anything in my house that might be different, unusual, or indicate any kind of haunting. Now, I also didn't really know much about what those things could entail, but I was watching a few paranormal shows and kind of had an idea. Weeks go on, and it's probably sometime in November, and I begin to notice what I think are strange lights reflecting on the ceiling of the house and maybe on the walls. I kind of brush it off and think, maybe it's coming from the parking lot, or perhaps it's coming from some open window, and maybe I'm just seeing a reflection. What really started to get my attention was the fact that my dog would watch these things, these lights, with very rapt attention, always watching where it went, where it came and went to, or where it traveled. I began to notice that as it happened more and more, and think to myself, that might be odd behavior. We've lived in a lot of places, my dog and I, and obviously this type of behavior was new to me and had never occurred before. I had no reason to think that there was any reason she would be acting this way. Time goes on, and it's probably late November or early December of 2020 at this point, when I start to realize that there are just some things not right with the house. At this point in time, anytime I leave the house and come back, my dog is hiding somewhere in the house behind a door or close to a door like she's trying to either escape or hide. Again, she's never done that anywhere we've ever lived, and I begin to think, this is really odd behavior. I begin to get worried about leaving the house. And then I begin to really not want to leave the house at all because I'm scared of what might happen to my dog while I'm gone, as I'm not really sure what's going on at that point. Sometime around that time is when I really began to notice more strange lights in the house that would be described as an orb. Having watched some of these paranormal shows, that's what I was able to identify it as. I began to really get worried at that point. The orbs seemed to not float or fly, but rather slide up and down walls. Up and down a stairwell wall, up and down a wall in the kitchen, even in the living room. They just seemed to slide along the wall. I didn't really catch on to it at that point in time, but I eventually did figure out that they were sliding along the wall and always ending in about the same place, which would be behind the bookcase where the sound machine now rested. More things continue to happen that are odd in the house. I notice the TV turns on and off. Various electrical appliances in the house turn on and off. The TV will change channels without me being in the room. Electronic appliances in the house will come on and off without me being in the room. Lights will turn on and off without me being in the room. Fans will turn on and off without me being in the room. When that first started, I really had thought to question my sanity and thought perhaps I'm just forgetting that I'm doing all these things. But it would just get worse. It got to the point where even objects were being moved around the house without me even knowing how they'd got from one place to the other. Clothing items, remotes, ice cream lids, but also things like hairpins or scrunchies or anything I might wear, or jewelry or things that I was using or would wear that would appear in one part of the house, and I know that I left them in another part. I began to really get sick, and I began to lose track of time easily. I would get sick. I probably had every illness, every sickness you could probably imagine at this point in time. Colds, flus, infections, you name it. I began to really think we were suffering some kind of strange and odd haunting. At this point in time, it's already December, January 2021, and I'm already having really bad nightmares or dreams, graphic dreams at night about violent things, but nothing in particular really specific. I even thought I saw what was an orb more than once behind my bed on the wall, and it would slide up and away, and I would always tell myself, you have to go to sleep, you have to get rest, even though at this point there wasn't much rest being had. And so my partner seemed mostly oblivious to all of this, but sometimes even they would notice something and ask me why this or that was out of place or why this or that had happened, and I would have no explanation for them. On top of all of those things happening, my sleep being disturbed, the weird occurrences in the house, weird things started to happen outside the house as well. When I say weird things started to happen outside the house, at times there would be times when the doorbell would ring at 3 a.m. and no one would be there. But there would be times when someone would knock on the door, always at 3 a.m. in the morning, and no one would be there. I know because my partner was downstairs at the time playing video games and looked outside the peephole and no one was there. It was also around this time that other strange anomalies began to happen outside my home. This occurred with weird things happening across the fence, with my neighbors, and weird things that I'm seeing around the property like shadows, shadowy type of figures, weird beings or entities that I see across the fence, or things I think I see in the shadows lurking. And this continues on for all of 2021. At this point in time, I'm sure I've got a haunting, but I'm not sure how this happened or what did I do to incur this haunting. And I'm watching as many paranormal shows as I can to try to figure out what's going on or what happened wrong so I can fix this. We get to 2022, and 2022 is where things really got ramped up and very bad. In 2022 is when I believe I suffered a heart attack while sitting on my couch during this extremely bad haunting. I thought I was going to die. I sat there for moments after, wondering what had really happened and if I needed to get the doctor involved or if I even needed to call an ambulance, because I wasn't sure if they'd believe me. And I panicked, wondering if maybe they would even find anything at all, if maybe it had all been in my mind. This was also around the time that I was just so very tired I could hardly get up each day and hardly had any energy for anything. During this time frame is when I started to try to get sleep during the day, and I would feel what would feel like little hands reaching through the blankets and trying to grab me. I really, at this point in time, started to believe that I had truly lost my mind. Eventually, I watched a show hosted by one of my friends, and they were discussing haunted objects. And I began to realize, perhaps, just perhaps, this very bad haunting that was happening in my life was not my fault at all, but due in part to an object I had brought into my home. I began to think, what objects had I brought into my home at about the time this haunting started? And I thought, and I thought, and I thought. I could nail it down to when I really started to get sick, being around October of 2020. Then I thought to myself, what did I buy online in October of 2020? Now, keep in mind at one other time in the past few years, I had actually tried to get rid of this sound device machine. But for whatever reason, I could not let it go. I could not, for whatever reason, seem to be able to donate it. I thought and I thought and I thought, and I realized that in October of 2020, that is when I had purchased this sound device. As soon as I realized that, I looked directly at the object. The object, for lack of a better term, seemed to realize that it had finally been seen. It seemed to realize that I finally knew what it was. I looked at it and I told it, "It's you, isn't it? You're the one doing this." And if an object could have any kind of feeling or emotion, it almost looked shocked. There weren't many haunting type activities on this day, the day that I realized that it was probably this object that I had brought into my home. This was the middle of the week. Obviously, my partner was going to be home very soon from work. I could not do what I needed to do that day. So a few days pass, and they work from home, and they're in and out of the office. And finally, I have my chance. I grab the object from off the shelf, along with everything that has been on the shelf with it, and I throw it all in a bag. And I just start casting out. And I cast out in the name of Jesus, and I cast and I cast and I scream, and I tell it to leave and take everything that it had in it with it. And that it was going to leave my house and never come back. Many people would have probably taken this opportunity to sell this object for a lot of money on a website. I could not in good faith sell this object or anything that was nearby it, neither sell nor donate it and pass this curse on to someone else. I threw it all in a trash bag and I threw it in the dumpster. Immediately, within hours of taking it from my home started to feel lighter, brighter. And over the next few days, weeks, and months, I began to feel healthier, less lethargic, and less sick. A great many other things were happening outside the condo and inside the condo while all of this was going on. As you may know, a condo shares a wall or walls with other people around them. None of the people around me in any of their homes seemed to be happy at all while this haunted object was in my house. I did not knowingly bring anything into this house with the intent to harm anyone around me. However, it just seemed to weirdly coincide that people around me seemed to be agitated, angry, and upset more often than seemed normal. In addition to what had happened inside my unit, there was a time when I was standing upstairs in my bathroom, which has a large mirror in it. The mirror faces directly the room and sliding glass doors behind me. One day, I was up there getting ready to leave and saw, in the glass behind me, while the haunted object was still in this house, a large, dark figure take shape. It looked not human. It looked not animal. It looked like something I have never seen. Totally dark, totally black. And it walked from where I could see it, the closest part of the mirror that I could see it in, to the door to look out the sliding glass door. As soon as I looked away and looked back at the mirror, the being was gone. But it terrified me. I can't tell you how many days, how many weeks, how many months we heard footsteps walking back and forth in that room. Back and forth and back and forth. So many times that my partner asked me who was up there or what was going on. During the haunted object being here in the house, we also got rid of so many other things I'd had for so very long in my life, objects that I might have held on to, mementos, or things that someone may have given me. Anything vintage, anything antique. I did not want to take the risk of passing anything haunted on to someone else, as I feared that this object was so deeply haunted that it may have woken up something latent in any of the other objects I had in the house. So I proceeded to clear the house out of anything older than a certain date. I could not take the risk of continuing to have this go on. Other things that happened during this haunting included, not limited to, the shadow beings that I would see outside the unit quite frequently, the knockings that would sound on the door, The doorbell ringing, always at 3 a.m. The knocking's always at 3 a.m. Weird lights in the sky above my condo unit. Weird scratches on the porch in sets of threes outside, on the porch, above the stairs. Weird handprints that appeared on the door. Weird occurrences that started happening at the neighbors where weird things were being left on their porch in the form of dead bugs. Lots and lots and lots of dead bugs in containers. Other things that happened were, this is when I started to see what I refer to as a dogman, but I'm not sure what it was, that I saw across the fence at exactly 3 a.m. in the middle of the night when I was walking the dog. The haunting started much sooner and much earlier than any of the activity outside. It began to be my belief that at some point, somewhere along the way, the activity was drawn in by what was happening in the house. I also do believe that the only physical dog type being I saw, and a very few of the spiritual type dog beings that I saw, were sent here to check on things and were also sent here to check on me. In a protectionary type sense, I did not get any feeling of misgivings from them, but very much that they were sent there to keep the spiritual balance in check, and that something was out of balance in my house. Other things also happened during this time frame. When I was laying in my bed one night, I saw a being come sit on the foot of my bed, but I was deep in sleep paralysis. The being closely resembles the Hat Man, but was not the Hat Man, but instead what I call the Gas Man, because he was wearing a gas mask and dark clothes, maybe a dark robe. As he sat on the foot of the bed, he just stared at me with this gas mask on and only communicated that he was not there to hurt me, but I did not believe that. Another event that occurred during the haunting was portals seemed to open into my bedroom one night, and what I can only describe as a predator-type animal being stuck its head out of the open portal and looked in on me. The portal itself seemed to be staticky or fuzzy or look like what you would see if you turned a TV on the static channel. The being stuck its head through and seemed to open a portal. Its arm seemed to look like it was definitely opening a portal. And it stuck its head through, and it seemed to be checking on me. This again happened when I was asleep, but not asleep, in some kind of other state that I can't quite describe. I believe a lot of these states were happening due to the object that was in my house. These were sleep-like states that I could not control, in which I was often awake and seemed to be out of my body during the nighttime hours, and therefore not getting any rest and not sure what was going on with my body or my spirit at that time. Since the haunting, and I cast out the object and threw it away, things have really calmed down around here. There hasn't been much activity at all. The few things that have happened around here were directly attributed to the spirit of a loved one coming by to let us know they were still here, keeping an eye on us. A prime example of that would be sometimes food would go missing, and it would always be a food that they favorited and liked a lot, and it would just be missing, with no empty containers in the house or the trash, and no way for it to show how it had left the house, even though we had brought it into the home. Other examples would be the TV would be changed, but it would be on their favorite TV show, which is The Golden Girls. So I know that they're still here, and I know that they're watching over us, and I know that they're protecting us. And I know that they helped defend us, even through all these terrible things that were going on during this terrible, horrible haunting that was happening in my home. Many of the things that happened during the haunting have not happened since I cast out the object and threw it away. I also threw out all the things on that shelf with that object because I was terribly afraid there might be a spiritual attachment to other items on that shelf. And since it was a full bookshelf, I decided eventually to throw almost everything away on the bookshelf itself or donate it, because I could not risk any other further attachments on my end. Before I did that, I made sure to ask and pray and even smudge the items that were leaving the house to make sure that none of them were going to leave with a spiritual attachment that they would take to another unknowing person's home. Since then, as many of you may recall, we took another trip in which we think we entered a portal but safely navigated out of it due to the help of the beings and the creatures that were there on the location that we were at. I firmly believe that going through this portal and passing through and coming back out the other side also confirmed that we no longer had any negative attachments to ourselves and no longer had any hauntings or negative attachments attached to anything that we were dealing with in our life. I don't believe that the creatures that were there would have allowed us through the portal if that had been so. And I don't think that we would have been allowed to come out the other side if we had any negative spiritual attachments attached to us at that time. As far as the haunting goes, now that it's all over and I can look back, I can tell you that I definitely don't buy things that are used anymore at a thrift store. I do not shop and buy things online anymore that are used on eBay. I simply do not want to take the risk, nor care to take the risk to bring something into my house that could potentially be haunted. I don't want to find out. And I definitely don't think that if I had another haunted object in my home, that I might be able to get rid of the haunting at all the second time, like I did the first. Which is to say, if I had a second haunting in my house, I don't think I'd ever be able to get rid of it. So this cautionary tale that I bring to you today is to caution you and tell you, I have had several personal close friends who have also had haunted objects in their homes, or who have had dealings with the spiritual realm. It is not something that you want to take lightly or mess with. And I would caution you all to be very cautious about what you purchase used online, or if you purchase anything used at all. Be very careful, as you never know what might actually have a spiritual attachment to it. In closing, I will tell you that I did reach out to the seller on eBay who sold me this sound machine and asked them why they sold me a haunted object, because understandably, I was very upset with why they would do that and sell something with a knowing attachment to it. I never received a response. I guess I should not be surprised. However, the seller is still selling on eBay, and they are probably still selling objects with haunted attachments, as I believe they are probably selling closed-out items from estate sales. This has been my paranormal experiences that I've had with a haunted object in my life. I would not recommend it to anyone, but I wish you all well out there in your experiences in life and your experiences with the paranormal. Embrace the positive, and anytime you come up against anything negative, always do your best to try to escape that negative entity or energy and cleanse yourselves and make sure that you have no attachments that follow you home, lest you too also end up with a haunting in your home.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.